I was only 12 when I first began to see my world through different eyes. Childhood had ended the night my mother whispered that haunting promise. One day you'll know everything. But when you do, it may break you. Those words clung to me like a shadow. At school, while the other children giggled about dances or baseball games, I sat quietly, wondering if my name, my face, my entire life belonged to someone else. The 1950s in America were supposed to be golden. At least that's what the television said. Shiny cars, smiling families around the dinner table, girls with bright dresses twirling to Elvis songs. But my world wasn't shiny. My dresses were mended too many times. Our old Chevy coughed black smoke every morning. And inside our house, beneath the laughter, was a silence thick enough to choke me. I tried to bury my mother's words, but the more I tried, the louder they grew in my head. I started paying attention in ways a child shouldn't have to. When my parents talked in hushed voices after dinner, I pressed my ear against the thin wall. When letters arrived in the mail, I watched how quickly my father snatched them away before anyone else could see. There was one moment I'll never forget. A neighbor, Mrs. Parker, came by one evening with her fresh pies. She patted my cheek, looked into my eyes, and said, "She doesn't look like you at all, does she?" My mother's smile faltered. My father cleared his throat so hard it rattled the room. They laughed it off, but I saw the panic flicker in their eyes. That night, I couldn't sleep. As the years edged closer to my teenage days, I felt trapped between two worlds, the one my parents painted for me, and the truth they were desperate to keep hidden. And then came the day that changed everything. It was a humid summer afternoon, the kind where the cicadas buzz loud enough to drown your thoughts. My father had left for work. My mother was hanging laundry, and I slipped into their room, heart pounding. I wasn't supposed to be there, but secrets don't reveal themselves politely. In the bottom drawer of my father's dresser, beneath the folded shirts that smelled of machine oil, I found it, a small box wrapped in worn brown paper. My hands trembled as I opened it. Inside was an envelope yellowed with time, and there, in bold ink, was a name that wasn't mine. I froze. My breath caught in my throat. That single word on the page felt heavier than all the whispers, all the silences, all the lies. But before I could read further, I heard footsteps creaking up the stairs. My mother's voice called my name, and in that moment, with the envelope burning in my hand, I knew my life was about to change forever. The name in the envelope. I remember the weight of that envelope in my hands as if it were yesterday. My fingers itched to tear it open, to spill its secrets onto the wooden floor. But my mother's footsteps grew louder. Panic surged through me. I shoved the envelope back into the box, slid it under the shirts, and closed the drawer just as the door creaked open. She stood there in the doorway, her apron dusted with flour, a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "What are you doing in here, honey?" My throat went dry. I muttered something about looking for a handkerchief. She studied me, too long, too carefully, and for a moment, I thought she knew. But then she nodded slowly, as if convincing herself, and told me to come down for lemonade. I left the room, but the envelope didn't leave me. That name, so sharp, so foreign, echoed in my mind like a song I couldn't stop humming. That night, long after everyone else had gone to bed, I lay awake staring at the ceiling. My imagination ran wild. Was that name the person I was supposed to be? Did I belong to someone else? Some other family I'd never met? And if so, why had they given me away? I promised myself I'd return to the drawer, but days passed, and fear held me back. I was terrified of what I might find, terrified of what it would mean for the little world I still had. Meanwhile, life outside our home marched on. At school, the girls whispered about boys and dances, and rock and roll was shaking the country. Elvis was everywhere, and even the most proper girls couldn't help tapping their toes. But I felt like I was drifting further from them, carrying a secret too heavy for my age. And then fate, or maybe chance, handed me another piece of the puzzle. One Saturday afternoon, I was helping my mother with chores when the phone rang. She hurried to answer, and I caught just enough of her voice to freeze me in place. Yes, I understand. But she mustn't know. Not yet. Her tone was urgent, desperate, like she was bargaining with someone. My heart pounded in my ears. I stepped closer, pretending to dust the bookshelf, straining to hear. But when she noticed me, she ended the call quickly, smiling too brightly. "Wrong number," she said. "Wrong number." But her hands trembled as she set the receiver back. That night, as I washed dishes beside her, I asked casually, "Mama, why would someone say I mustn't know something?" The plate slipped from her hand and shattered in the sink. She didn't answer. Instead, she turned to me with eyes brimming with tears. For a second, I thought she might finally tell me the truth. But then she kissed my forehead and whispered, "Some things are better left alone, sweetheart. Better left alone." But I knew then that the truth was clawing at the walls of our house, desperate to get out. And if my parents wouldn't set it free, I would. What I didn't realize, what I couldn't realize, was how dangerous the truth could be. Because in a few weeks' time, one reckless choice of mine would crack my family's silence wide open, and I would never look at them the same way again. The envelope with a different name, mysterious phone call, mother's trembling denial, a foreshadowing that the truth will soon explode, the reckless choice. For weeks, the envelope haunted me. It felt like it was alive, waiting in the drawer, whispering my name whenever the house grew quiet. My mother's words, "better left alone," only sharpened my curiosity. If something had to be hidden so fiercely, then surely it was the one thing I needed to know. By then I was 13, teetering between childhood and adolescence, carrying secrets too heavy for either. My friends were busy with sock hops and gossip about movie stars, but my world was smaller, darker, filled with questions that clawed at me day and night. And so, one evening when the air was thick with the hum of crickets and the smell of fresh-cut grass, I made my choice. My parents had gone to visit a neighbor, and my siblings were at a church youth gathering. I was alone. Heart pounding, I crept back into my father's room. My hands shook as I slid open the bottom drawer and pulled out the box. The paper was brittle beneath my fingers. The envelope, yellowed and fragile, seemed to pulse with the weight of time. I tore it open, ignoring the part of me that screamed stop. Inside, I found a birth certificate, but it wasn't mine. The name at the top was a stranger's. The mother's name was not my mother's. The father's name was not my father's. And the place of birth was a town I'd never even heard of. I stared at it until the letters blurred. My chest tightened, breath shallow. My hands shook so violently I nearly dropped it. I wasn't who I thought I was. But before panic could swallow me whole, I noticed something else inside the envelope, a small photograph. It was of a baby, wrapped in a thin hospital blanket. The edges were frayed, the image faded, but I could see the curve of a cheek, the tiny fist curled against its chin. And pinned to the corner of the photo was a name written in ink, the same name that had stared back at me from the certificate. It wasn't my name. I sat there in the dim lamplight, clutching the photo, feeling as though the floor beneath me had vanished. If I wasn't their child, then who was I? Whose blood ran through my veins? Why had they kept me? And just as the question swallowed me, I heard the front door creak open. My parents were home. Panic surged. I shoved the papers back into the envelope, stuffed it into the box, and pushed everything into place. My heart hammered so loud I was sure they could hear it from downstairs. I barely made it to my room before my mother's voice called out. I sat on my bed, breathless, my mind a whirlwind of names and faces that didn't belong to me. That night I couldn't sleep. I turned the discovery over and over in my mind until it cut me raw. The next morning, I looked at my parents differently. I watched their movements, the way they avoided my gaze, the way their smiles flickered when they thought I wasn't looking. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't just a child obeying her parents. I was a detective, searching for cracks in their story. But I didn't realize then that the cracks I was chasing would lead me far beyond our quiet little house, into a truth bigger, darker, and more dangerous than I could have ever imagined. Because only a few weeks later, I would make another reckless choice. I would follow my father. And what I discovered on that night would change everything. The discovery of the birth certificate had split my world in two. Days blurred into weeks, yet the questions gnawed at me like a hunger that couldn't be satisfied. My parents went about life as usual, Supper at 6, church on Sundays, small town routines. But I watched them with new eyes. Every word, every glance, every pause carried new meaning. And then came the night I made my second reckless choice. It was a Thursday in late autumn, the kind of night when the air smelled of burning leaves and the chill crept through every crack in the windows. Supper had ended, my siblings had gone to bed, and my father said he had an errand to run. That wasn't unusual. He often disappeared for a few hours in the evenings. But this time, something in his voice, low and hurried, made my stomach knot. I waited until he had been gone for 15 minutes, then slipped on my coat and followed. Our town was small, the streets dimly lit by scattered lamps. I kept my distance, staying in the shadows, my heart pounding so loud I feared it would give me away. He walked with purpose, his hat pulled low, his shoulders hunched against the cold. He didn't head toward Main Street, where the stores and cafes sat. Instead, he turned down a dirt road leading toward the edge of town. The road ended near the old train depot, long abandoned since the new station opened. Its windows were broken, the roof sagging, the place a skeleton of what it once was. And yet, to my surprise, there was light seeping from one of the boarded-up windows. I pressed myself against a tree and watched. My father glanced around, then slipped inside. My breath caught in my throat. What business could he have in a place like that? Minutes passed like hours. My legs ached from crouching, my fingers numb from the cold. Just when I thought I might collapse, the door creaked open. My father stepped out, but he wasn't alone. Beside him was a woman I had never seen before. She was tall, with dark hair pulled back beneath a scarf, her face pale in the dim light. She carried a bundle wrapped in cloth, which she handed to him with care, as though it were something precious or dangerous. They spoke in hushed tones, too soft for me to hear. But I saw the way my father's hands trembled as he took the bundle, the way the woman gripped his arm with urgency. Then, just as quickly, she turned and vanished into the night. I ducked low, my breath frozen in my chest as my father tucked the bundle under his coat and walked back toward town. Every instinct screamed at me to run home, to pretend I had never seen any of it. But I couldn't. My feet moved on their own, keeping to the shadows, following him back through the streets until he returned to our house. From my hiding place near the porch, I saw him slip inside quietly as though not wanting to wake anyone. I waited, heart pounding, until the lamp in his room flickered out. Only then did I dare creep to my own bed, trembling beneath the covers. What was in that bundle? Who was that woman? And why did my father meet her in secret, in the middle of the night? I knew then that the truth was bigger than just a strange name on a piece of paper. Something was happening beneath the surface of our lives, something my parents had gone to great lengths to keep hidden, and I was determined to find out what. But what I didn't know was that chasing this truth would lead me into a darkness I wasn't ready for. a darkness that would change the course of my life forever. She secretly follows her father, sees him meet a mysterious woman at the abandoned train. Depote father receives a mysterious bundle. Suspense intensifies. The secret is much bigger than just her identity. I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the woman's pale face, the bundle in my father's arms, the way he carried it like it held the weight of his soul. The house. And I was going to find it. The chance came 3 days later. My father left for work early, and my mother was busy baking pies for the church fair. I pretended to help, but the moment she was distracted, I slipped away. I searched every corner of the house, the closets, the attic, even beneath the loose floorboards in my parents' room. Hours passed, and frustration gnawed at me. Maybe he had taken it somewhere else. Maybe I had imagined the whole thing. And then, just as I was about to give up, I noticed something odd. The trunk in the corner of their room, the one my father always kept locked, was slightly ajar. My heart leapt into my throat. I knelt beside it, hands trembling, and lifted the lid. Inside, beneath old blankets and yellowed letters, lay the bundle. The cloth was rough, tied with twine, stained in places I didn't want to imagine. My pulse roared in my ears as I untied the knot and peeled back the layers. What I found inside made my blood run cold. It wasn't money. It wasn't jewels, it was papers. Dozens of them. Letters, certificates, documents with names I didn't recognize. Some bore official seals, others were handwritten, their ink smudged with age. And tucked among them was another photograph, this time of a young woman, no older than 20, holding a baby in her arms. The baby looked exactly like me. I stared at it, my hands shaking so violently I nearly dropped it. My breath came in short, sharp gasps. The young woman's face was unfamiliar, but her eyes were mine. The floor creaked behind me. I spun around, clutching the photo, and there he was, my father, standing in the doorway. His expression was thunderous, his fists clenched at his sides. "What?" he said in a voice that shook the walls. "Are you doing?" The photo trembled in my grip. My mouth opened, but no words came out. My chest burned with the weight of all the questions I had carried for years. And before I could stop myself, I shouted, "Who am I?" The words echoed through the room, through the silence, through every corner of the life they had built around me. My father's face crumpled, not with anger, but with something far worse. Pain. And that was when I knew the truth was about to come crashing down. But whether it would heal me or destroy me, I didn't yet know.